Hey everybody, welcome to our Proclinic webinar on building a loyal customer base through building trust. My name is Kyle Verdell. I'm with our Proclinic team, and today we're excited. We're going to do something a little different. We're talking about how to relate to customers, how to talk to customers. And whether you work on trucks or big rigs or boats, RVs, motorcycles, whether you're a technician, whether you own a shop, you're a service advisor, we all need one thing. We need customers. We can't stay in business without customers, right? Nobody really does a lot of training on how to deal with customers. You get a lot of on-the-job training of maybe how to do a certain inspection or, do a certain repair, but there's not a lot of instruction on training. So that's what we wanted to do today. So today I'm excited to talk to Chris Collins. He wrote the book, literally 3 best-selling books on customer advisory. And he's a great guy, has great podcast, and we're going to talk about focusing on a connection with the customer beyond putting them in the box of just a transaction, right? And then we'll talk with Jeff Barron. If you've attended any of our Proclinic webinars, you know Jeff. He is the utmost industry-leading expert on batteries, and he's going to talk to you about what's going on inside a failing battery in a way that you can communicate that to a customer, right? Because you want to know what you're talking about when you're talking with a customer. They want to know that you know what you're talking about too, so they can have confidence in what you're saying. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the opportunity that you have currently in your shops. You have the opportunity here to be the guy or the girl. You want to be the go-to that customer says, this is my guy, this is my girl, this is who I go see with my car. And as a customer, we want to have that guy or girl. We want to have a person that we trust, we know we can rely on. And as Chris Collins puts it, you want to collect customers because you're assuming you're going to be in your job or your career for a while. You don't want to look at this as a one-time exchange. You need to meet these people. You want to have them want to come back to you. So if you can do a little bit of that each week, collect one customer a week, you're going to be set. So let's talk about your business, your shop, or your customer list, your book of business if you're not a shop owner. Let's talk about the opportunity to increase sales, but also to build trust with customers by delivering good news and helpful warnings when you need to. We know from Battery Council International that 1 in 4 batteries is going to fail to meet OE specifications at any given time. Now that can be more than that in hotter climates and maybe less than that in more temperate climates. But 1 in 4 batteries is the national average of failing batteries on the road. So those are cars that are in your shop every day. If you just put a tester on them, you'll see if they're meeting OE specs. And that's 1 in 4 chances to prevent a breakdown for that customer, but it's also 3 in 4 chances to give them good news. And as everybody knows, if you've ever had work done on your AC or your computer, I always talk about my dentist. She would always, point out the good things that were going on and point out things that she's like, hey, let's keep an eye on this. Hey, try this fluoride rinse or whatever. And I'm like, great. So after 3 or 4 visits, 2 or 3 years, when I finally do need to get a filling done, I'm like, okay, I believe you. Let's do it. It's not fun, but neither is buying a battery, right? So we need to look at the opportunity to deliver the good news and build up that trust. Now let's look at this another way. And this is a simple Excel document we can send out to you if you'd like. Put your name in the chat, your email address in the chat, and we'll email it to you right after the webinar. But it's just a little Excel calculator. You can slide those things around or you can type in the numbers, but it helps you calculate your annual car count. So that's the number of customers you see in a day and the days that you're open a week or that you're working a week. So you can see the number there is your annual car count or customer count. And like I said, we know 1 in 4 batteries is failing, so there's the number of batteries that you can identify by testing. You slide that tester around, that test percentage rate around, and you'll see, most people are testing fewer than 10% of cars, maybe 5%, usually just when customers ask them to. But look what happens if you slide that over. If you tested half the cars that you're already seeing in your shop, here's the number of cars that you're going to identify with a failing battery. Now put in the number, the profit, that you make off of a battery. If you're a shop owner, that could be as high as $50 to $100. Put in your labor rates, whatever you want to put in there, but hit calculate, and that's your profit on batteries. So there is a huge sales potential there. But it only comes if you're testing the battery. So that's the opportunity. There is a huge sales opportunity. You don't have to sell a battery. All you have to do is test. If you test more batteries and you communicate those results, you will see sales. But more importantly, batteries and even your multi-point inspections are a chance to generate good news, bits of good news that you can give that customer, and put yourself in their shoes. You'd want to hear the good news too, but you'd also want to hear the helpful warning if something's going bad. Don't have to sell it. You don't have to push them. We're not going to talk about overcoming their objections. We just want you to deliver the results. So now let's talk with Chris Collins. He is the bulldog of the service drive, author of 3 best-selling books: Gamification, Playing for Profits, The Irreplaceable Service Manager, and The Millionaire Service Advisor. He also has the #1 podcast on automotive right now. It is called Service Drive Revolution. That joke may make sense in a few minutes. But anyway, you'll see. Great guy. Just really enjoyed talking with him. And he's talking about getting out of the mindset of viewing customers as just a transaction, right? Making a connection, forming, even if it's just, a small relationship in their life, but having some connection, some reason to speak into, their needs and their what they need for their car. And I think if we can make a shift there, you're going to see a big change in your own revenue. So we'll do that, and then we're going to talk with Jeff Barron. Like I said, he's going to give us just enough information about what's going on inside a battery so that you're able to communicate that to a customer. And there is a certain sense of urgency. They do need to take this seriously, and he'll explain why. So let's go over and talk with Chris now.
All right. Hey, guys. We are so excited to be bringing this Proclinic to you from a very special location with a very special guest today. Wanted to start by saying, hey, at Interstate, we have a purpose. Our purpose is to glorify God and enrich lives as we deliver the most trustworthy source of power to the world. Our sales teams have a similar mission, and that's to have a positive impact on all the dealers that we work with. And we can do that through lots of things. We have consigned no-cost inventory, so that reduces your capital. You don't pay for the batteries until after you sell them. We manage the battery program for you. That takes a lot of time off your hands, a lot of busyness. We go in and we optimize your inventory based on the vehicles registered in your area. We rotate out any old batteries that are sitting on the shelf because batteries are perishable, right? As soon as they are activated, they're starting to decline. We do all this, and we also offer training like Proclinic webinars, which some of you have been on. And those are usually technical training webinars, like our troubleshooting electrical systems webinar, or our upcoming one on AGM batteries. Well, sometimes we also do training on things that are not technical and not battery related, but on improving your business, like how to optimize your Google My Business listing. You can find all of those on interstatebatteries.com/Proclinic if you want to go look those up. But today we're talking about something that nobody really talks about. We are talking about how to deal with customers, how to talk to customers. We met with a customer service advisor in Houston named Jason, and we were there talking about our tester and how to communicate test results to customers. And at the end of the day, he came up and he said, hey, thank you, because nobody ever comes in here and talks about how to talk to customers. They may train us on their equipment or the latest fluids, but they don't talk to us about how to talk to customers. So today I'm really excited because we are on the set of Service Drive Revolution. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that was great.
Close enough?
What do you think of the set?
It's amazing. This is amazing. I've been watching it from home, and what you don't see behind the cameras is the full LA skyline and the sun, which just poked behind a building. But you've got guys here setting up lights and running sound, and I'm doing our little webinars usually from the office I built in my garage during COVID. So it's been great being here. And you are a customer service advisor expert. You built your career on this. Now you're fixing businesses. You've written books. You're a speaker. You're traveling everywhere. So again, thank you for being a part of this. What would you say is your philosophy on dealing with customers?
I think that the first thing that you have to think about when it comes to service is you have to put people in a category. So now when you think about customers coming in for service, they're putting us in a category. And most of the time, everything we do forces them to put us in the category of transaction, something that I have to do. But what we want is we want to be in the category of friend or family. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important to understand that our actions, the way we approach them, the way we talk to customers, the way we make customers feel, all of that adds up to what category they're going to put us in. Now, what happens if we're in the transactional category? What's the fatal flaw of that?
Everybody wants to like guard their wallets, be protected.
Yes, and you kind of hinted at it. It's about price. And the problem with it being about price is everybody can do it cheaper. It's like Lee Iacocca has a great quote about, if it's just about price, then it's a chase to the bottom, because everybody can do it lower, right? And so like you hear a lot of times about tires, you hear like, oh, well, Costco's price, and it's like, it really has nothing to do with Costco. It has to do with you're putting the customer in the frame of a transaction. So you have a dog, right?
Yep.
What kind of dog?
We have a mutt named Roscoe.
So you rescued?
Yeah, we've rescued about 11 dogs now.
Okay, well, you're going to go to heaven and I'm not, because mine are not rescues. It's funny, the other day, somebody walked up and asked if they were rescues. And I'm like,
yeah, there's not a lot of those out there, rescued bulldogs, full breed bulldogs.
They're high pedigree, they're not super smart, but they are what they are. So I, always told myself, well, if I'm going to move to California, I'm going to buy a house with a swimming pool. So I bought a house with a swimming pool. I was like, well, the next thing I need is a dog. And there was this lady in Fashion Island that had a kind of a higher end pet store here. So I'm there, and just because, whatever, I said, can I play with that guy that looks like he's been chasing parked cars, which was a bulldog. So she takes this guy down and hands him to me, and he looked into my soul. This guy, he's my first bulldog, Rocky. And I bought him on the spot. I fell in love with him. Smartest dog. I tell my dogs now all the time that Rocky actually used to put his toys away. And my dogs now are like, yeah, sure, Dad. And he walked uphill both ways. But he literally would put his toys away. Great dog. And he couldn't swim. Bulldogs can't swim. So that's the funny thing about the pool is...
Seem very buoyant.
No, they sink. And a couple times I had to jump in with my clothes on to pull them out. So you don't hesitate. You just go, because they sink quick. But when Rocky was about 6 years old, he just had this dramatic flip where he lost a ton of weight. And his tongue turned as gray as your shirt. It was really weird. And so Dr. Butchko was the vet. He said, it's an aggressive cancer, and there's really nothing we can do. We won't perform surgery. And I just said, there has to be something I can do. Like, I'm not accepting this as my reality in a sense. And he said, well, there's this one guy that comes in from the East Coast that will perform that surgery. And from what I've heard, he's been successful. They put us in this kind of triangle room. And so if you can imagine, it's me, and there's an open chair kind of where you are. It's me, it's my ex-wife, Satan, and Rocky is sitting there, right? And so this doctor comes in, he walks in, he sits down, and he crosses his legs, and he says, I've looked at the images, and it's an aggressive cancer. If you want to leave him, I will perform the surgery tonight. And he goes to stand up and walk out. And my ex-wife, Satan, turns to me, and she says, that man is not touching my baby with a knife. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she goes, he's not a dog person.
Yeah.
And I go, what do you mean he's not a dog person?
Yeah, he didn't care.
He goes, he never acknowledged Rocky. He never petted the dog, right? And so to you and I, we understand that, right? Because I couldn't be in a room with your dogs and not go crazy. Yeah. In fact, I'm more comfortable around dogs than I am around people. Mm-hmm. So you understand as a dog person that if somebody doesn't love dogs, you can't imagine them taking a knife and cutting them open or loving them during the surgery. Now, the truth of the matter is you don't want a surgeon that is emotional, right? you actually want a psychopath of a surgeon that feels no emotion whatsoever, because when things go wrong, they just kind of follow the textbook and they don't get caught up or emotional. But that isn't how we think as people, right? And so insurance companies have spent tons of money trying to figure out how to stop malpractice suits. And at the end of the day, Tommy over here actually killed somebody and didn't get sued. And Dr. Joe over here gets sued all the time and he's never killed anybody. And in their research, it just comes down to petting the dog. It's bedside manner. It's empathy and it's bedside manner. And so now if we go back to what I was originally saying about the frame that the customers put us in, is if it's just about a transaction and it's about price and there's no relationship, then we don't have anything. We have no equity in the marketplace.
Right.
And so the thing that I learned as a service advisor is the car or the truck was the last thing I talked about. What I would do when I walked into customers and just, hey, how are you doing today? Where are you headed? And they'd say, oh, I'm headed to work. Where do you work? And I would ask 3 to 5 questions, and we would do a walk around, never mentioning what they were there for. I didn't walk up to them and say, did you have an appointment? Mm-hmm. What brings you in today?
Weekend plans.
I was always looking for things too that were commonality, right? So if somebody has a Seahawks sticker, whatever it is that you can see, there's something to build, commonalities. But I wanted to shift customers' frame to friend or family. And the conversation you would have with a friend or family is about sports. It's about holidays. It's about work. It's about relationships, spouse, kids, right? Somebody has kids. Oh, can I see pictures? How old are they? Mm-hmm. Somebody has a dog. I'd say, oh, can I see a picture? What's the dog's name? How long have you had him? And then I show my dogs. Now we're having a conversation like a friend, and I've shifted them out from the transactional to somebody that they trust and like. And now I have the beginning of a relationship long term.
As somebody who just met you today, I think you're doing that genuinely. Like you did that when I showed up today. It's not.
You know why? Because I didn't know anything about cars.
Yeah.
Like
that's not why you did it today, but that's why you did it when you were.
Even when I was running the largest selling BMW dealership in the country at the time. People would ask me about cars, and I'd say, you know what my favorite car is? The one that's selling. Like, I don't know. I wasn't tearing apart an engine when I was a kid. I was playing drums.
Yeah.
And so I always was a little insecure to even get into the frame about talking about the technicalities. But I sold more than anybody else because I had the relationship, and I could say, well, let me ask the tech. Mm-hmm. And so I would much rather ask the tech and have them tell me than pretend like I knew, and customers didn't begrudge that. They don't, as long as you get them an answer, they're much more interested in the relationship and the trust and the equity. Right. So it was a survival mechanism for me because I didn't know much about the cars.
Yeah, it's good.
And I'm 19, right? I'm 20. Like it wasn't of interest to me. I was trying to be a rock star.
Mm-hmm. And the customer wants to feel comfortable with you anyway. Like they probably don't need to know the technical details, but they need to know that somebody is concerned, somebody's petting the dog, that they're at least have some connection beyond the transaction.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest misconceptions in our industry is we think that customers are in a hurry. And we think that it's all about time. But once again, time that is sped up is in the frame of a transaction. Do we want to be the convenience store, or do we want to be a friend and have a relationship? Because many times customers are pretending like they're in a hurry, and they'll spend 20 minutes there talking to you, and they've had the greatest time and you've made a friend, and they completely forgot about time. The time frame was because of the frame of transaction. And transactions you want to get over as quick as you can because there's no emotional connection. As soon as you add the emotional connection and change the frame to friend or family, all of a sudden time also changes. Perception of time.
And so how did you as a service advisor use tools like multi-point inspections and test results Did you need to know more technically at that point, or did you just need to deliver the messaging?
Well, the thing that I figured out very early on, and I'm not sure if somebody taught this to me. I think one of the other advisors there taught me this, but I had to mention the inspection. So I would always say to the customer at write-up, I would say, hey, the technician's going to check it out also. So whatever they came in for, and if we find anything else that you need to know about, I'm going to let you know. But I would plant the seed that we were going to do an inspection. So if I called them, I could say, hey, the tech checked it out and he found a couple things that should be addressed. And it wasn't like I was coming out of the blue. It was like, hey, we were checking it out and you need to know. And so planting the seed earlier on created a lot of sales later because they were expecting the inspection. What's interesting is I think most customers assume we're inspecting, but once again, it's just the frame and setting it up that changes their reaction.
Yeah, and that's true. We did a study of thousands of drivers, of car owners, and 84% assume that an inspection is being done along with routine maintenance. They assume that your battery is being tested, other tests are being done. And so if they leave that shop and the battery fails within a month, something like 37%.
400 million percent?
Somewhere in the 30% is not going to come back to that shop for that battery, for that service. Because it's like, you didn't catch it the first time, why should I trust you?
Yeah.
So
for sure. Yeah, that unforeseen surprise breaks people's heart because they think that we're looking out for them, and then when they're disappointed, there's no more relationship, right? Because we didn't show that we care. I think too, in my system, I set the technician up as the hero because they are the hero. They're the only ones that can fix the problem. So I was always referencing them like they were the doctor. And I was delivering the news and I was the liaison, but they were the expert, So they were going to do the inspection. They found,
what do you think keeps shops from doing that? And to the flip side, what's the key to building a culture where you're going to inspect and you're going to deliver the results?
So that's a long conversation, but I think that most people misunderstand what culture is. And so most people think that culture is giving people what they want or providing them with free lunch or a work environment that they love. But there's two parts to that. First of all, you can't make somebody happy. So if you have employees and you feel like, oh, I need to make my employees happy, that's impossible because happiness is their choice. And happiness comes from the inside. It's not something that we can inflict on somebody. You've never created happiness in somebody. You might have made them happy for a second or temporarily, but really what you're doing is if you're chasing their happiness, you're creating a culture of entitlement. And a lot of times that's what happens is we have this culture of entitlement and we're not understanding what culture is. So what I always ask is, well, what's the opposite of culture? And the opposite of culture ends up being chaos. So what culture is order and structure. And so having pay plans and systems and accountability and minimum requirements and actually, managing it like it matters and like there are expectations and there is training and there's performance indicators that are rewarded. That creates a culture more than trying to make people happy. So think about culture as the opposite of culture is chaos. And so culture is order and systems. And so, you were saying earlier about accountability, right? Like we were talking about on my show, on Service Drive Revolution, about accountability and leadership, right? That is culture. Is then when you do that, you have to attract people that fit into that. And so culture really is built in the hire, not after. It's really hard after a bad hire to implement culture. It happens at the hire. And
talking about it coming from the top down, I think it has to be a genuine desire to, and this is what I encourage anybody watching this, is like, you use the term collecting customers, right? You need loyal customers that are going to come back to you for life. And you can't do that by upselling parts that they don't need or, taking shortcuts. It's out of genuine concern that you want to, and I'm going to steal so much from you, but you want to keep them safe on the road by letting them know, hey, here's what's going on with your car. This looks good, this looks good, this looks good, you're building trust. This we should keep an eye on, and this looks bad. Or it all looks good on this trip, and the next time something else needs to be done, but they trust you. And that has to be genuine. It can't just be something that you do, like you mentioned making a connection. I believe that you have to genuinely want to connect. And people are going to sense if that's being done as just a ploy to fake build trust. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I also, like, a lot of times people say, like, oh, do you have scripts? And we do, but you don't want them. Yeah. Like, what we want to do is teach them how to make friends. And there isn't really a script to making a friend. You just want to ask questions and pay attention to what they're interested in. Mm-hmm. And so that's a liquid thing. It's moving. And so scripts kind of put you in the frame of the commodity more than anything. Yeah. So we have them, like,
unless you're a great actor, people are going to know you're reading from a script.
Who wants to do that anyways?
Yeah,
you want to make friends. Like, the other side of this, the flip side of this, is just think about how rewarding it is if you're making friends with people all day. Like, you go home and you're like, hey, I'm taking care of people. I'm keeping them in a safe and dependable vehicle, and I'm their go-to person for their vehicles. Like, that's a rewarding thing, to be of value to other people. There's nothing better than that. People strive for that their whole lives. Like, now you mean something. You have meaning in the marketplace because people hold you in high esteem, because you're taking care of them and treating them like they matter. The other thing I always say is, if you wouldn't sell it to your mom, don't sell it. There's so much stuff to sell. Mm-hmm. People's tires are always, batteries are always going. There's so much stuff to sell. All that matters if you're friends and you're out of the frame of just transactions. Makes it all easier. Great conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Make sure you guys tune into Service Drive Revolution whenever you have a chance.
Can we do it together? Service Drive Revolution. Thanks a bunch. Fun.
Well, now at least you can tie it all together. Yes!
All right.
And take two.
All right, we just recorded this whole thing and then the camera had shut off. So we talked about your battery opportunity. We talked with Chris Collins about building a connection with customers. Now we're going to talk with Jeff, our battery expert, Jeff the Battery Baron.
The Battery Baron.
Here in the ISO 9000 certified testing lab.
Correct.
There's no higher standard that a lab can achieve to in the United States. Right?
That is correct.
This is as good as it gets. This is where we test all the batteries that come from our manufacturers to make sure that they're triple tested to be compliant. Is that the right way to say that?
Yeah,
Something
perfect.
like that? Yeah. So Jeff, we want to equip you to understand from a technical standpoint just enough about what's going on inside a battery when that failing battery test comes back to you, so that you can explain that to the customer. If you're confident understanding what's going on inside that battery, you can help them feel confident making a good decision. So Jeff, what's the most important thing to talk about when testing and communicating results?
So one of the things we really need to get in tune on is getting the correct information from the customers coming in. Mm-hmm. Because they may be coming in and saying, I need a battery, and we need to be asking, why do you think you need a battery? Mm-hmm. So if they're coming in saying, well, it won't crank, well, we need to go a little bit more in depth. We need to find out exactly why they're saying that they need that battery, because they could have left the dome light on. So we need to be asking follow-up questions to make sure that this is not going to happen again.
Right.
So, and especially if they're trying to come in and buy one that might be particularly under warranty or something, we need to make sure. Yeah. Because we need to look at what we've always said, the 3 C's.
The 3 C's.
Yes. So we need to be looking at the cables. we need to look at the connections,
Mm-hmm.
and heaven forbid the corrosion.
The corrosion. 3 C's of connection, okay? Because that could be why the battery is appearing to fail.
Yeah, exactly. So when we look at that, we're looking at cables because you need to make sure cables are actually staying tight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because over time cables are going to loosen up. I mean, that's unfortunately the way we drive. You know, the different climates that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have some of that will actually occur over time.
And that, I'm sorry, your cables can be the ground cables,
Could be the positive cable going down to the starter. I mean,
Mhm.
all these things are the generation of what basically are letting amperage flow.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have a good path
Mm-hmm.
for current to flow, well, guess what?
Right.
You're not going to get all of it going through.
So if there's frayed wires, that's like, you've used the analogy, shutting down lanes on a highway.
Yeah.
Electrons aren't getting through, resistance is building up, and
Resistance creates heat. Yes.
Okay, so that's cables.
Yes.
What are the other C's?
So we look at the connections, the cables. We look at the corrosion factor as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at corrosion, that's one of the big things that the big C's that will really kill a battery really quick because it's acidic.
Right.
All right. So a lot of folks will use the wire brush method. So Kyle, is that really getting that thing clean?
No,
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yeah. So when you're doing the cleaning to be able to put a new battery back in there, make sure you clean it properly. Baking soda and water, Kyle, that is the best and the cheapest
Yeah.
to be able to neutralize acid.
Great.
Now, you can do that by, using a brush, or we do this, because we do a lot of installs as well. Taking a styrofoam cup, cutting it in half, baking soda and water, mix it up, and you can actually dunk your cable end in.
Okay.
Well, now it's neutralizing.
Yeah. And
So-
it's wicking that neutralizing solution up into the cables,
Yeah.
which is what corrosion is doing too. It's going into the cables. I actually had that happen with my sprinkler system. I could see that they had been in the water,
Yeah.
that they were corroded up into the wire.
Yep.
So corrosions, your cables are in good shapes, and clamps.
Clamps, big time on the clamps. So when you look at clamps in general, if they get loose, well, guess what? Now you got
It's like a little
resistance.
spark.
Yeah, so resistance creates heat, as we were just talking about. So there are occasions where you can actually see a melted terminal,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not the battery's fault.
Mhm.
And that's what we always hear, well, the battery caused that.
Yeah.
Well, the battery was just there. The
Right,
cable
right.
was what was loose. It's
Yeah.
trying to generate power. So it once again
It's gonna
falls
be-
back in on that path.
Tight and clean.
Tight and clean.
Yeah.
So we talked about the cleaning of the acid.
Mhm.
So neutralizing it, cleaning it, rinsing it off, drying it before you actually put it on a clean contact surface.
Yeah, and dirt.
And dirt.
And
Oh.
dirt too. Yeah.
Believe it or not, guys and gals, dirt is actually a conductor. So if it's on top of the battery, you can just take your voltmeter if you've got one, put them on the top of the battery, not on the terminals, just on the top of the battery. You can see voltage.
Hmm.
So it's a conductor. It's pulling from the battery. Now it's not pulling amperage. It's just pulling voltage.
Yeah. It's just a little bit.
Yeah. So, but we
That's
still
good.
want to educate everyone.
Yeah.
Keep them clean.
Yeah. And a battery can sit on a concrete floor. In case
Yes.
you're wondering, it's not an issue anymore.
Yeah. But if your grandparents tell you to do that, do that. Respect.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about, so you talked about heat.
Yes.
What's such a big deal about heat?
Oh my goodness. So heat is a really bad proponent for batteries. They don't like heat. They don't like cold either. But heat is really bad because as you get heat inside the battery, you actually start the gassing process.
Mm-hmm.
So the gassing is actually evaporating water.
Right.
Internally on the battery, everybody calls this fluid battery acid. It's roughly about 75% water, 25% sulfuric acid.
Okay, so you got this balance.
Yeah, so now you got a really good balance. But when you start losing water, and a lot of these batteries now are maintenance free, so you cannot get in to check water levels.
Mm-hmm.
So over time, that water level and the acid are going to actually shift.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening there, Kyle? Now we're getting more acidic gassing
Right.
going on because of the heat.
Right.
And we do a lot of that testing here in the lab. We've got a standard SAE test that we run that is testing the battery in a water bath at 167 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of mimicking the underhood temperatures of a car during operation. And so when you're gassing internally, now you're actually eating away at the grids, the straps. The paste material now has no place for it to actually adhere to on the grids.
Right.
So now we're creating more resistance. All right, so more resistance is going to create more heat.
More heat.
And more heat is going to create more evaporation. So now we're going to get to the point where our acid content is overrating our water level.
Right.
So what's going to happen now?
So you got less water to cool,
Yes.
more acid to corrode.
Yes.
That corrosion means less conductivity.
Yes.
The lead plates take the electrons out of the battery into the car, and they're corroding faster, so it's becoming a cycle.
Yeah. So the unfortunate thing is, as you get close to end of life on the battery, the cycles will increase. I mean, it's going like really fast because there's so much acid content in there. So now we just need to figure out, when's this battery going to fail?
Yeah. So if a customer service advisor or a technician or somebody does a battery test and they tell the customer battery is below OE specs, it's failing, I'm going to ask, how long do I have?
Yeah.
So what do they tell them?
So when you get that question asked to you, which you will, undoubtedly, 3 to 4 years is probably about average for, different climates. Now, as you're getting into colder climates where you don't, see
Or more
excessive-
temperate climates,
Yeah.
it's going to last longer.
Yeah.
Hotter climates going to go faster.
We just talked about this earlier because you and I were talking about going on the trip.
Right.
So Hawaii,
We should all live in Hawaii.
yeah, we should all live in Hawaii because the temperatures over there are basically where the batteries lie.
Yeah.
Anywhere from 80 to 90 degrees.
So move to Hawaii.
Yeah, move
and
to
you'll
Hawaii.
get the longest life out of your
Yeah,
battery.
and hopefully the island doesn't turn over because there's too many people.
Yeah.
So we look at that, and as we look at the different regions, you cannot actually predict because we don't have a crystal ball. That we got pulled back because of budget cuts.
Yeah.
So we don't have a crystal ball to be able to tell you when this battery is actually going to fail. But as we look at these different testers that we can actually use to kind of give you a gauge of the battery, now we can get you kind of close. Now we can't tell you the day and the time that it's going to fail, but we can look at the capacity that's remaining. We can also look at your alternator to make sure the alternator is actually still good.
Right.
There are conductance testers out there that will allow you to look at amperage in and out of the battery or out of the alternator under loads or without loads. And it can also actually show you what amperage is going down to the starter at certain times, temperature ranges. So you do have conductance testers that can do that, and they're giving you a snapshot of exactly where that battery is right now at this time.
Right.
So if let's just say we're looking at a marginal battery. So we've been testing this battery for this consumer that's been coming in religiously on doing maintenance. So we've been telling them for 3-4 years now that the battery's great. They're still doing good. Now we're getting into that marginal portion of it. I can't tell them when this thing's going to fail, but I can show them where we're at on the value. So, if I've got a 700 CCA battery and it's coming in at, 550, it's below the specs.
Right.
So I want to educate those folks to let them know so they can make an educated guess or decision, not guess, as to replacing the battery.
Right.
At least we've conveyed that to them.
Yeah.
That's the key behind this.
So you're showing them you're not saying that this is going to die tomorrow. You're just showing it's below OE specs, but you're also now equipped to know that means that there is an increasing cycle of deterioration inside that battery. That the heat is getting greater because there's more resistance. And the water is evaporating faster because of the heat. So less conductivity through the plates and more plate deterioration because of the high acid levels. And that's speeding up as it gets closer to the end of its life.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to make sure we're giving them the exact information they need, because if we say, hey, look, Mr. Customer, all through these years we've been showing good. Here we got into the marginal, and now we're at the replace mode. We really need to replace this battery before you get out there and get stranded. So the first question they're going to say, well, it started when I came in. Okay, well, that's true. But what happens when you leave here, and I've just explained that this thing needs to be replaced, and the first stop you make, you come back out and it won't start.
Okay.
We don't want that to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, if they leave your shop with a bad battery, you've told them, 70% are more likely to replace soon, and more likely to replace with you if they've been shown a bad battery test. But if you let them leave without telling them about the bad battery, there's about 30% that are never going to return to that shop. So it's critical, if you want to build a loyal customer base, that you test every battery you can, and that you deliver all the results, especially the good results.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's a big plus.
Yeah.
The reputation that you have for the shop and with that consumer that you're working with. I mean, unfortunately now you got social media, so one bad experience can really hurt you.
So build that customer trust, build those good reviews, and you will build your business and a good career. So thank you, Jeff. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Join us for our next Proclinic. We'll put a QR code down below, and we'll see you on that one. Thanks.
Thank you all.